Gears 5 made a decision that the fanbase was not ready for. It took one of the most beloved supporting characters in the entire franchise, handed her the main role, and then at the end of the game asked you to make a choice that the series had never asked before. A choice with real consequences. A choice that people are still arguing about in 2026. The Coalition released Gears 5 in September 2019, and it arrived carrying a significant amount of expectation. Gears 4 had been a safe, competent, somewhat cautious return to the franchise after the transition from Epic Games to the Coalition as the developing studio. It played well, but it did not take risks. Gears 5 was the correction. It pushed the story in a genuinely unexpected direction, expanded the world in ways the series had never attempted, built one of the most technically impressive games on Xbox hardware at that time, and delivered a multiplayer suite that kept a dedicated community active for years afterward. 7 years later, looking back at Gears 5 with the full picture visible, the conversation is more complicated and more interesting than the launch discourse suggested. Kait Diaz is the protagonist, and the story is fundamentally about her. In Gears 4, she was a compelling secondary character with a mysterious family history tied to the Locust Queen. Gears 5 puts that history at the center of everything and follows Kait as she investigates her connection to the Swarm, the evolved form of the Locust that emerged at the end of the previous game. She is joined by JD Phoenix, the son of Marcus Phoenix and the original protagonist of Gears 4, Del Walker, and a small robot companion named Jack, who serves both a narrative and mechanical function throughout the campaign. The relationship between Kait, JD, and Del is the emotional backbone of the story, and it develops with more authenticity than most third-person shooter narratives manage.
The writing makes real choices about who these people are and what they want, which creates genuine tension as those desires come into conflict. JD in particular is a character who arrives in Gears 5 carrying the weight of something he did between the events of the two games, something the story reveals gradually and handles with more maturity than you might expect from a franchise historically associated with enormous men chainsawing each other. Laura Bailey voices Kait with consistent emotional intelligence throughout a campaign that asks her to carry scenes of grief, rage, confusion, and determination across approximately 12 hours of story content. The performance is one of the better lead voice acting contributions in the franchise's history. The choice at the end of the second act is the moment Gears 5 plants its flag as a different kind of Gears game. Without describing the specific details to protect the experience for anyone who has not played it, the game presents you with a decision that directly determines which of two characters survives a critical story moment. Both outcomes are fully realized with their own consequences for the final act. The character you do not save dies, and the game acknowledges that death with real weight in the chapters that follow. This was polarizing at launch because Gears fans were not accustomed to the series asking them to make choices with permanent narrative consequences. Looking back in 2026, that decision represents the most ambitious storytelling move the Coalition has made in their tenure with the franchise, and it paid off in terms of emotional impact regardless of which outcome you chose. The campaign structure introduces open-world segments between the linear story chapters, and this is where opinions genuinely diverge. The game uses a skiff, a wind-powered sled, to traverse two large open regions called Kadar and Voskar. These areas contain optional side objectives, upgrade components for Jack, collectibles, and additional story content delivered through environmental exploration. The open regions are visually impressive, and the traversal using the skiff feels fast and satisfying. The side content itself is largely functional rather than exceptional. Outpost missions follow a predictable structure. Tomb locations offer combat encounters and collectibles. Nothing in the optional content reaches the narrative quality of the main campaign chapters, but none of it overstays its welcome significantly either.
Jack as a companion deserves specific discussion because the mechanic is genuinely innovative for the franchise. Jack is a small flying robot who can be upgraded using components found throughout the campaign. His abilities range from cloaking Kait temporarily to stunning enemies to directly attacking swarm units to hacking fabricators and enemy turrets. In cooperative play, a third player can control Jack directly, giving them a unique role that is completely different from the standard cover shooting the other two players are doing. The Jack system adds a layer of tactical option to combat encounters that the series had not previously offered, and the upgrade progression gives players meaningful choices about how they want to use him throughout the campaign.
The core cover shooting mechanics are the finest the franchise has produced. Gears 5 runs on an updated version of Unreal Engine 4, and the technical investment shows in how the game feels moment to moment. The Gnasher shotgun, the weapon at the heart of Gears multiplayer for the entire series, has never felt better to use than it does in this game. The active reload system, the weapon swapping, the slide into cover, the blind fire mechanics, all of it operates with a crispness and responsiveness that rewards mechanical skill visibly. Encounters against the Swarm are designed around flanking, cover breaking, and priority targeting in ways that give combat encounters real strategic texture beyond simply shooting at things. Enemy variety across the campaign is solid. The Swarm presents different unit types that require specific tactical approaches. Snatcher enemies grab squad members and require immediate attention to prevent elimination. Flock enemies are aerial swarms that demand crowd control weapons. Carrier units deploy smaller enemies mid-combat and become priority targets immediately. The boss encounters are infrequent but well-designed, with the Warden being a particular highlight as a recurring threat that the game uses intelligently across multiple chapters.
Visually, Gears 5 was a genuine technical achievement at launch and remains impressive in 2026, though the bar has risen considerably in the years since. The environments demonstrate real artistic commitment to variety across the campaign. Snow-covered mountain ranges, desert ruins, underground locust structures, and urban combat zones each have distinct visual identities. The character models and facial animation during cutscenes set a standard that the franchise had not previously achieved. Running the game today on current hardware with full resolution and ray tracing enabled produces a clean and visually appealing experience, even if it no longer represents the absolute cutting edge it did in 2019. The multiplayer at launch offered versus modes, including the standard ranked play that the Gears community had sustained across multiple titles, Horde mode returning as the cooperative wave defense experience the franchise had established in Gears 2, and a new mode called Escape. Escape is a 3-player cooperative mode where players begin inside a swarm hive having just triggered a poison gas venom bomb and must fight through procedurally selected map sections to reach the exit before the gas catches them. The mode is faster and more aggressive than Horde, and the map builder tool that allowed the community to create and share custom escape hives provided significant additional content longevity. In 2026, the active player count across all multiplayer modes is substantially lower than at launch, but the core community that remains is dedicated and the servers remain functional. The progression system in multiplayer used a tour of duty structure at launch that rewarded playing various modes with cosmetic unlocks through completing objectives across different categories. The system was designed to provide consistent rewards without requiring direct purchase, but it received criticisms of being slow and occasionally forcing players toward modes they did not prefer to complete objectives. Updates across the game's support period adjusted the system multiple times. The current state of progression in 2026 is more accommodating than the launch version, but the monetization design remains a point of honest criticism.
The Horde mode implementation is the best the series has produced. The Fabricator system, which allows the team to purchase fortifications and weapons using power collected from enemies, combined with the class system, where each player brings different abilities and skills to the team, creates a genuine cooperative strategy layer beneath the shooting. Class options include the Gunner, Pilot, Demolitions, Anchor, and Engineer archetypes, each with distinct skill trees that encourage team composition thinking rather than everyone playing identically. A well-coordinated 5-player Horde team against the higher wave counts produces a cooperative experience that the series does better than almost anyone else in the third-person shooter space. The weaknesses of Gears 5 are worth stating without softening. The open-world segments, while ambitious, never fully justify their existence in terms of the quality of content they contain. The optional side missions feel obligatory in design rather than genuinely rewarding. The story ends on a cliffhanger that in 2026 remains unresolved because Gears 6 has not yet arrived, which transformed what was intended as exciting narrative momentum into a frustrating open loop. The multiplayer population decline was steeper than the community hoped, and the Tour of Duty system at launch demonstrated that the live service design thinking did not always align naturally with what the Gears audience actually wanted from the game. Despite those criticisms, Gears 5 is the most complete and ambitious entry the Coalition has produced in their stewardship of the franchise. It took genuine creative risks with the story, delivered the best-feeling cover shooting mechanics in the series' history, built a technical showcase that represented Xbox at its best, and created a cooperative multiplayer suite with real depth. The character work around Kite Diaz demonstrated that the Gears franchise could carry an emotionally sophisticated narrative alongside its traditionally bombastic action.
Gears 5 earns a 4.2 out of 5. The open world content quality gap, the unresolved story ending, and the launch multiplayer progression issues prevent a higher score. What remains is a genuinely excellent third-person shooter with more ambition, better writing, and stronger mechanics than the franchise had previously demonstrated under its new development team. In 2026, with Gears 6 still absent, this is where the story of one of Xbox's most important franchises currently stands. Mid-sentence, waiting. If you made it this far and you are still thinking about that choice at the end of Act 2, drop a like on this video. Subscribe if you want honest reviews like this one delivered straight to you. Share this with someone who gave up on Gears after the original trilogy and never came back. And tell me in the comments who you saved at the end of Act 2 and whether you regret it. No judgment either way.